Hi guys, and welcome to Terminal Velocity. Today we're going to be doing the 8th episode of the Zelda Versus series, Oracle of Ages versus A Link to the Past. These two games are actually a lot more similar than you would imagine, which will make this a very interesting game. The first category we have is creativity, and while Oracle of Ages isn't the most creative game in the series, it does have a few fairly creative things, such as the time traveling and the different dungeon things. However, A Link to the Past added a lot of new things to the Zelda series, as it was the third game, and the only games before it were Zelda 1 and 2, and it added a lot. So, A Link to the Past gets the point in this category. While A Link to the Past does add a couple new items, which makes combat a little more interesting, the Oracle games have a lot of new items that vary combat more, such as the big slingshot, as well as some of the animal friends that you can ride. And this helps a lot for combat and makes the game a lot more fun if you like fighting enemies. Even though Oracle of Seasons is more of an enemy fighting game, Oracle of Ages still definitely has it down in this category. The next category we have is exploration. And while Oracle of Ages has a much larger overworld than A Link to the Past, A Link to the Past does have the Dark World. But Oracle of Ages also has the Past world, which adds even more, which makes Oracle of Ages have more exploration feel than A Link to the Past does. The next category we have is items, and as I mentioned earlier, Oracle of Ages has a lot more combat related items, but in general, A Link to the Past has many more items in general that are more helpful and effective for the game itself, which gets it the point in this category. The next category we have is enemies. And while Oracle of Ages does have a good amount of enemies with different variety, A Link to the Past adds tons of new enemies to the series and has different variants of them, plus the Dark World has a lot harder and different versions of the same slightly changed version of enemies from the overworld, which gives A Link to the Past another point in this category. The next category we have is dungeons, and while A Link to the Past has excellent dungeons that are some of the best in the series, Oracle of Ages might have the best dungeons in 2D Zelda, with some of the best puzzles, best dungeon designs, best hidden secrets, and just linearity as well as exploration of the dungeons. It makes it one of the best games in terms of dungeons, which gives it the definite point in this category. The next category we have is characters. And while A Link to the Past was the first time there was really any character development in a Zelda game, the Zelda series wasn't really what it was during Oracle of Ages in terms of character recognizability as well as like the lore. So, and Oracle of Ages does have pretty recognizable characters that are interesting with good development, which gives it the point in this category. The next category we have is story. And once again, while A Link to the Past does have a very good story, and it's nothing like any of the Zelda games before it, Oracle of Ages has a clear advantage due to it being a newer, more recent game with more games in front of it, including Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, which helps it a lot as its story is definitely better than A Link to the Past. The next category we have is emotion. And unlike the last couple of categories, Oracle of Ages does not have the advantage, and A Link to the Past, well, it doesn't have the best emotion in the series at all. It definitely has more emotion than Oracle of Ages does, so it gets the point in this category. The next category is progression. And while Oracle of Ages has pretty good progression, and it doesn't progress that well, A Link to the Past has amazing progression, probably one of the best in the series, where it gets from easy to at the end being very hard and difficult, and it has great progression, and overall it's just very well progressed and balanced, which gives A Link to the Past the point in this category. The next category we have is side content. And in A Link to the Past case, aside from a couple mini-games, it really doesn't stand any chance against the multiple side quests and rings of Oracle of Ages, which gets even more if you add in the linked game. So Oracle of Ages gets the point in this category. The next category we have is music. While the Oracle games do not have the best music in the series, and there aren't very many notable songs, A Link to the Past has probably one of the most recognizable soundtracks, with introducing songs such as the Lost Forest, Dark Woods and Mountain, as well as Zelda's Lullaby and Hyrule Castle. So A Link to the Past gets a definite point in this category. The next category we have is bosses. And while A Link to the Past does have very, very great bosses, Oracle of Ages also has very good bosses. But what makes them more special is its ability to turn bosses from 3D games, specifically Ocarina of Time, and make them in a 2D format and still be fun, which makes Oracle of Ages get the point in this category. The next category we have is art style, and since this is a fight between two 2D games, it's very hard to tell about the art style. However, while A Link to the Past has a fairly basic SNES art style, the Oracle games don't look very similar to any of the other Zelda games, so I'm going to give it the point in this category. The next category we have is world. And while Oracle of Ages does have a larger world than A Link to the Past, the world often feels more barren and there isn't as much to do, while A Link to the Past feels open and there are many cities and things to do. So I'm going to give A Link to the Past the point in this category. The next category we have is difficulty. While A Link to the Past definitely has better progression than Oracle of Ages, in terms of difficulty, Oracle of Ages is awful to play through because of how ridiculously difficult its dungeons and puzzles are, and how just long and hard that it is. So, I'm going to give Oracle of Ages the point in this category. And while Oracle of Ages is technically already won, which I would have never guessed, I would have definitely thought A Link to the Past would have won. We're still going to go to the last category, which is replay value. While Oracle of Ages apparently is a better game than A Link to the Past in terms of overall balance, A Link to the Past definitely has better replay value and is more fun to play over and over again. So I think it gets the point in this category. I hope you liked this video. I would have never guessed that Oracle of Ages is a better balanced game than A Link to the Past. But if you like this content, be sure to like and subscribe, as well as watch a couple of my other videos, and comment down below. It's very appreciated. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and be sure to see me in the next round of the Zelda series. Also, did you know that the Link from these two games is actually the same person, unlike a lot of the other Zelda games? It's the hero of legend, and I will be covering him somewhat soon on the Hyrule Historia series. Bye.